What if every electric car on the road today, every Tesla, every BYD, every Hyundai Ioniq, was built around a fundamental flaw? Not a software bug, not a design oversight, a chemical one, buried deep inside the battery pack, something the engineers knew about, something the industry quietly accepted, because for a long time there was no alternative. The liquid inside your EV battery is not just inefficient, it is unstable. It degrades, it burns, and it has been quietly setting a ceiling on everything electric vehicles could ever become. That ceiling is about to be shattered. Today, we are going to understand exactly why and what comes next. To understand why solid-state batteries matter, you have to go back. Not just a few years, decades. The story of the electric vehicle battery is not a story of steady progress. It is a story of compromise, of engineers making the best of what chemistry allowed, and of an industry that eventually stopped asking whether there was something better. It starts in the 1800s. The lead-acid battery. Heavy, slow, inefficient. But it worked. Early electric vehicles actually outsold gasoline cars in the early 1900s, before the internal combustion engine took over and pushed EVs into irrelevance for nearly a century. Then came the 1990s. Nickel metal hydride. NIMH. A genuine step forward. Toyota built the first Prius around it. Cleaner, lighter, more reliable than lead-acid. The hybrid era was born. But NIMH had its own ceiling. Energy density too low, self-discharge too high, temperature sensitivity too problematic for a true long-range electric vehicle. And then, lithium-ion. This is where the modern EV story really begins. Sony commercialized lithium-ion in 1991, first for consumer electronics, laptops, phones, camcorders. The chemistry was remarkable, far higher energy density than anything before it, rechargeable hundreds of times, relatively stable under normal conditions. By the mid-2000s, engineers started asking, what if we scaled this up? Tesla asked that question louder than anyone else. The original Roadster in 2008 used thousands of small lithium-ion cells, the same format as laptop batteries, wired together into a single pack. It was unconventional. It was borderline reckless. And it worked well enough to prove that long-range electric vehicles were possible. And the industry followed, slowly at first, then all at once. By 2020, lithium-ion had become the universal language of electric mobility. Every major automaker, Volkswagen, Hyundai, General Motors, BMW, was betting their entire future on lithium-ion chemistry. Gigafactories were being built on every continent. Supply chains for lithium, cobalt, nickel, and graphite were being locked in for decades. The infrastructure of an entire global industry was being poured in concrete around one chemistry. And that chemistry had a problem. Several, actually. Here is what lithium-ion requires to function. A liquid electrolyte. A solution, typically lithium salt dissolved in an organic solvent, that acts as the medium through which lithium ions travel between the anode and cathode during charge and discharge cycles. Without it, the battery does not work. But that liquid is flammable, and it degrades over time. It behaves unpredictably at extreme temperatures, and at a fundamental physics level, it limits how much energy you can pack into a given volume and weight. The industry knew this. The engineers knew this, and for years the answer was always the same. Manage it. Engineer around it. Add thermal management systems. Add safety layers. Add complexity on top of complexity. Nobody seriously asked, what if we removed the liquid entirely, until now? Let's talk about what a battery actually does. At its core, a battery is an electrochemical engine. It stores energy not as electricity directly, but as chemical potential. When you charge it, you force lithium ions to migrate from the cathode, typically a metal oxide compound, through the electrolyte, and embed themselves into the anode, usually graphite. When you discharge, they travel back. That movement of ions is what generates electrical current. Simple enough. But here is where physics starts to push back. Graphite, the material used in virtually every lithium-ion anode today, can only hold so many lithium ions per unit of volume. Its theoretical maximum energy density is around 372 milliampere-hours per gram. That sounds technical. And what it means in practice is this. No matter how well you engineer a graphite-based lithium-ion cell, you are working within a ceiling that the material itself imposes. You cannot engineer your way past atomic structure. The best lithium-ion cells on the market today, the ones inside a Tesla Model Y, a BYD Seal, a Hyundai Ioniq 6, reach somewhere between 250 and 300 watt-hours per kilogram at the cell level. At the pack level, accounting for all the thermal management hardware, the structural components, the wiring, the cooling plates, that number drops significantly, sometimes to as low as 160 watt-hours per kilogram. That gap between cell-level performance and pack-level performance is not an engineering failure. It is the cost of managing a liquid electrolyte safely at scale. And safety is where the story gets darker. And the liquid problem. The organic solvents used in lithium-ion electrolytes, compounds like ethylene carbonate and dimethyl carbonate, are not just flammable. They are highly flammable. At elevated temperatures, they do not simply catch fire. They undergo thermal runaway, a self-reinforcing chain reaction where heat generates more heat, decomposition generates gas, pressure builds, and the result can be catastrophic. You have seen the videos. A Tesla on a highway, a Chevy Bolt in a garage, an e-scooter in a New York City apartment. The fire burns at temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees Celsius. It cannot be extinguished with conventional water. It reignites after it appears to be out. Firefighters have had to submerge entire vehicles in water tanks for days just to fully arrest the reaction. This is not a rare manufacturing defect. And this is the chemistry behaving exactly as physics predicts under conditions of mechanical damage, extreme heat, or rapid overcharging. Every lithium-ion battery pack in every EV on the road today is one sufficiently bad scenario away from this outcome. The industry's answer has been containment. Sophisticated battery management systems that monitor cell voltage and temperature thousands of times per second, cooling circuits that run liquid coolant through channels between cells, structural enclosures designed to direct flames away from passengers in the event of a thermal event. These are genuine engineering achievements, but they are also band-aids on a fundamental chemical instability. The degradation problem. There is a third problem. Quieter than fire, but just as consequential. Every time a lithium-ion battery charges and discharges, the liquid electrolyte degrades slightly. Lithium ions do not always embed cleanly into the graphite anode. Sometimes they deposit on the surface instead, forming tiny metallic lithium structures called dendrites. These dendrites grow with each charge cycle, like slow-motion stalagmites forming inside the cell. Over time, they can penetrate the separator between anode and cathode, causing an internal short circuit. This is why your phone battery holds less charge after 2 years. This is why EV batteries lose range after 100,000 miles. And this is why the industry quietly accepts that an EV battery pack is a depreciating asset, not just economically, but physically. The numbers are not trivial. A typical lithium-ion EV battery retains roughly 80% of its original capacity after 1,500 to 2,000 charge cycles. That sounds acceptable until you realize it means a car bought today will measurably lose range before it is paid off. And the liquid electrolyte is not just a safety risk, it is a timer, a slow countdown built into every electric vehicle ever made. And this is where everything changes. The idea that changes everything. Remove the liquid. That is the entire premise of solid-state battery technology. 3 words, deceptively simple, extraordinarily difficult to execute. Instead of a liquid electrolyte, that flammable, degrading, ion-conducting solution, a solid-state battery uses a solid material to perform the same function. A ceramic, a glass, a polymer, or a sulfide compound that conducts lithium ions just as effectively, but without any of the chemical instability that has defined lithium-ion for 3 decades. And here is where the cascade begins. Because removing the liquid does not just solve the fire problem, it unlocks an entirely different architecture, one that changes the energy density equation, the degradation equation, and the manufacturing equation all at once. This is not an incremental improvement. This is a platform shift. And the architecture. In a conventional lithium-ion cell, the anode is graphite. We established why that matters. Graphite's theoretical energy limit caps everything above it. But graphite was never the first choice. It was the safe choice. The choice engineers made because the alternative, lithium metal, was too dangerous to use with a liquid electrolyte. Lithium metal as an anode material is extraordinary. Its theoretical energy density is 3,860 milliampere-hours per gram. Compare that to graphite's 372. That is not a modest improvement. That is a 10-fold increase in theoretical capacity at the anode alone. The reason lithium metal was abandoned decades ago is precisely the dendrite problem described earlier. In a liquid electrolyte environment, lithium metal anodes grow dendrites aggressively, far faster and more dangerously than graphite. And the risk of internal short circuit was simply too high for commercial deployment. But in a solid electrolyte environment, the physics change. A sufficiently dense solid electrolyte mechanically suppresses dendrite growth. The solid material acts as a physical barrier, preventing lithium structures from propagating across the cell. The dangerous becomes manageable. The theoretical becomes practical. Pair a lithium metal anode with a solid electrolyte and a high-voltage cathode, and you have a cell capable of reaching 400 to 500 watt-hours per kilogram. At the pack level, because solid-state packs require dramatically less thermal management hardware, real-world energy density could approach 300 to 400 watt-hours per kilogram. That is roughly double what the best lithium-ion packs deliver today. Double the energy. Same weight. Or same energy, half the weight. Either way, the vehicle physics change completely. The chemistry. Not all solid electrolytes are equal. This is where the engineering gets genuinely complex and genuinely competitive. There are 3 main material families being pursued simultaneously. Oxide-based electrolytes, ceramics like LLZO, lithium lanthanum zirconium oxide, are chemically stable and safe, but brittle and difficult to manufacture at scale. Sulfide-based electrolytes, compounds containing lithium, phosphorus, and sulfur, have higher ionic conductivity, closer to liquid levels, but are sensitive to moisture and require careful handling. Polymer-based electrolytes are more flexible and easier to process, but currently only perform well at elevated temperatures, limiting their application range. Each approach has its champion. Toyota has invested most heavily in sulfide-based chemistry. The company holds more solid-state battery patents than any other automaker on Earth. QuantumScape, backed by Volkswagen, is pursuing a lithium metal anode with a proprietary ceramic separator. Samsung SDI is developing its own sulfide-based cell-targeting 2027 commercial production. CATL, the world's largest battery manufacturer, is developing what it calls a condensed battery, a semi-solid approach that bridges the gap between current technology and full solid state. The race is not just scientific, it is geopolitical. The real-world numbers. Here is what solid-state battery technology promises in practical terms. Charging speed. And because solid electrolytes do not degrade under high current the way liquid electrolytes do, solid-state cells can theoretically accept charge rates that would destroy a conventional lithium-ion cell. Early laboratory demonstrations have shown 10-minute charging to 80% capacity. Not 30 minutes, not 20 minutes, 10. Lifespan. Without liquid electrolyte degradation and with suppressed dendrite formation, solid-state cells have demonstrated cycle life exceeding 1,000 full charge cycles with less than 10% capacity loss. Some laboratory results suggest 2,000 to 3,000 cycles is achievable, potentially doubling or tripling the usable lifespan of an EV battery pack. Temperature resilience. Liquid electrolytes freeze at low temperatures, reducing ion conductivity dramatically. This is why EVs lose range in winter. Solid electrolytes maintain conductivity across a far wider temperature range, from -30 to over 100 degrees Celsius, without significant performance penalty. Safety. Without flammable solvents, thermal runaway as currently understood becomes chemically impossible. A solid-state battery pack damaged in a collision does not ignite. It fails, but it fails safely. These are not marketing claims. They are laboratory-validated benchmarks. The question the industry is wrestling with right now is not whether solid-state batteries work. It is whether they can be manufactured consistently, reliably, at a cost that makes them viable in a mass-market vehicle. That question does not yet have a final answer, but it is getting closer. So where does this leave the giants? Toyota has been the most vocal and the most patient. For years, the company was criticized for moving too slowly on battery EVs, while Tesla and BYD surged ahead. But Toyota was not slow. It was waiting. The company has quietly accumulated the largest solid-state battery patent portfolio on Earth, over 1,000 filings, and has announced plans to begin limited production of solid-state battery vehicles by 2027, with full-scale deployment targeting 2030. Their internal target, 1,200 kilometers of range on a single charge, charged in 10 minutes. Tesla, by contrast, has remained conspicuously quiet on solid state. The company's current strategy centers on its 4680 cylindrical cell format, a larger, more efficient lithium-ion cell that reduces manufacturing cost and improves pack integration. It is a genuine engineering achievement. But it is still liquid electrolyte, still graphite anode, still subject to the same fundamental ceiling. Elon Musk has publicly expressed skepticism about solid-state timelines, calling manufacturing challenges extremely difficult. He is not wrong, but skepticism is not the same as immunity. Volkswagen's bet on QuantumScape is perhaps the most aggressive wager in the industry. The startup has demonstrated a working lithium metal solid-state cell in laboratory conditions, achieving 1,000 charge cycles with minimal degradation. Commercial production remains the unresolved challenge. And then there is CATL, the company that manufactures roughly 37% of all EV batteries on Earth. If solid-state arrives and CATL is not ready, the consequences are existential, which is precisely why they are not waiting. Does this technology change the rules of the industry? It does not change them. It eliminates them entirely and writes new ones from scratch. There is a pattern in the history of technology. The dominant solution, the one that won, the one that scaled, the one that every supply chain and factory and business model was built around, rarely dies from a direct attack. It dies from beneath, from a quieter technology that nobody took seriously until the moment it became impossible to ignore. Lithium-ion did not kill lead-acid through brute force. It made lead-acid irrelevant, quietly, completely, permanently. Solid-state batteries are not arriving as a challenger. They are arriving as a replacement, not next year, not universally by 2030, but the trajectory is no longer in question. The physics are proven. The chemistry is converging. The manufacturing problems are engineering problems. And engineering problems, given enough time and enough money and enough competitive pressure, get solved. The electric vehicle sitting in a showroom today is remarkable. It is also the last generation of a technology that has already been superseded in the laboratory, if not yet on the road. The next car you buy may still run on lithium-ion, but the one after that? Almost certainly not. The battery that powers the future of mobility is not the one we perfected. It is the one we are only now learning to build. And the race, the real race, has already begun.